Hidden Strike American Revolution. This is a game published by Worthington Games. It has a fairly thin theme based on the American War of Independence. It is fairly abstract overall, but hey, the components are pretty. This game can be played in several possible modes, such as Versus, Solitaire, Cooperative, with a trader mechanic. I played the game only in the Solitaire version, because, well, this pandemic is lasting a little longer than we all expected, so I don't have game night yet with my adult friends, which I thought I would have by now, but that's not the case, so yay, more Solitaire play. Well, things continue this way. So here we have the board. It represents 6 contested regions. Each region has 2 sections. One is where the American player will place their game pieces, and one where the British player or the British AI will place their pieces. We're trying to take control of these regions, so these 6 regions, and if a side has 8 points worth of troops in a region and is ahead of by at least 2 over the other player, then that side takes control of the region. For example, if in Tidewater I have 8 points and the British side has 6 or less, then I take control of that region and I place a card with that side facing up. If the other side has at least 8 and I'm behind by 2 or more, then that side takes control of that region. To win the game as the American player, which is the only side you can play in the Solitaire version, you need to take control of at least 4 regions out of 6, which is extremely difficult, especially because if the game lasts until the end, which happens when one of these 2 decks is depleted, then all uncontrolled regions by then go to the British. So basically you need to actually and actively take control of 4 regions before either the American deck is depleted or the British deck is depleted. And super important, of course, if the other side takes control of 4, or even just they take control of 3, then you know you cannot win, because again, you need to take control of at least 4. So, the general idea is you have these pieces and then card play will tell you where they are depleted. Some are placed at the beginning of the game in these 4 spools on the 2 sides, again British and American. They're not there yet, they're potential people that will join the fight. And then we have 2 other 4 spools that they're not localized, they're not assigned to specific regions. One for the Americans and one for the British. Since these are coming across the ocean, there is a chance that you'll be able to stop them. Actually, there's also another pull force here, which is for the allies that are going to try to help the Americans. Some land troops that may be able to land on the continent, and some ships that may be able to prevent these other units to be placed. The idea is that if in a region the Allied ships outnumber the British ships, then land units that need to come across the ocean cannot get there. If a card says deploy them there, for example, there in Tidewater, but in this case the Allied ships outnumber the British ships, then there is a blockade. But again, that is not going to happen all that often, because a lot of game effects will place a ship there. And again, in a tie, basically in a tie, every time there's a tie about really pretty much anything, the British win and you are in trouble as the American side. I wanted to point that out about that little element there, that angle in the British deployment. General idea. Turn sequence. At the beginning of each turn, the American player will reveal a card from the top of the deck and will simply do what the card says. You resolve the card. And in some cases, pretty self-explanatory. The Seneca from the northern colonies will be deployed. So we'll look at the northern colonies and the native forces that were in that force pool are deployed there. Just as simple as that. Suppose that the card instead has said that the Loyalist militia of the Mid-Atlantic had deployed, then we would do that. As you can see, the game is really pretty simple. Or the Loyalist troops of somewhere else, or the Loyalist militia of Canada. I think you get the gist. Other units are a little trickier. Those pesky Hessians, they have the ability that after they are deployed, they force you to draw another card from the British deck, and then you need to deploy another one right away. Their ships, again, they deploy in specific ways, breaking blockades if they can, otherwise going to unresolved regions. An unresolved region is one that has not been assigned yet. After a region is controlled by a side and you place that kind of card there, it counts as resolved. Most game effects will bypass it. It cannot be targeted. There are a couple of really small effects that can affect a resolved region, but it's very rare. In most cases, nothing happens in a region after it has been resolved. The Grenadiers, very powerful, but again, is one of those that will land only if there isn't a blockade. And just, if you read this, actually, you can pause, and especially read some of these long texts that basically tell you what happens if the unit cannot be deployed, then as described, and there is a plan B that the text describes. So the general idea is that you start the turn by drawing a card from this deck, and some units are likely to be added to some of these boxes, maybe even more than one, if those pesky Hessians are doing their thing. Finally, you get to play, you have a hand of cards that come from your American deck, and they're very similar. Actually, there are a couple of extra effects, but the general idea is still that they will allow you to deploy troops. For example, deploy one militia from its local force pool to its conflict zone. Boop. That'll be it. That's all I do this turn, and then I draw a card from their deck. Oh, after I play a card, then I draw cards until I replenish my hand. But the idea is they play a card, I play a card, they play a card, I play a card, with some exceptions. So I can just play a card from hand, and sometimes I get a couple of interesting options. I wish we had more of options that let us recruit loyalists. That is one of my favorite options. You move a loyalist from their side of the region to yours. But also, it must be a time when there are loyalists. If you get this card really early on, or they have deployed other stuff, not as useful. So I'll just give you a sense of some of these cards. So at any point, you can just pause the video and see what they do and what some of the restrictions are. The general idea is still that you're gonna mainly try to deploy units. You're gonna mainly move wooden blocks from force pools to specific regions. This is one that you will wanna read. And sometimes you can manipulate your own deck or manipulate their deck. The idea, however, remains that one of the things that you can do during your turn is to play a card. However, there's also another option. You can promote a troop. You can promote a militia into a veteran. If you do so, simply you discard a card, ignoring what it says, and you take one of your militias and you replace it with a block. We were talking about the values of these units. You need to have 8 points. A cube counts as 1. These slightly longer count as 2, which is pretty intuitive because they're exactly as long as 2 cubes. Another option that you have, if you have a veteran unit, you can discard 2 cards, ignore their effect, and you promote your regulars into veterans that have a value of 3. As you can see, it's very intuitive. Even if you just put them right there this way, you know exactly when you have or how many you have in a region. Now, that'll be pretty neat because I got 8, they got 0. Booyah! But that's not going to happen. Not very likely. So, the idea remains. During your turn, you play a card or you discard 1 or 2 cards to promote your American troops. You can also choose to discard 1 or 2 cards for no effect, and you must have a really bad hand if that's the case. You have a bad hand, there are no units that you can possibly promote. Really, really bad. But those are the options that you have. And this is really the general idea. They play a card, the AI plays a card, and you implement it. You play a card or promote some of your units. There are a couple of other rules that give you some advantages, but again, the idea that this is the flow of the game. You continue like this until you have control. You control at least 4 regions, or one of the many other situations that will give control of the American continent to the British. Hidden Strike American Revolution. I like the idea, and I like many elements of the implementation, not all. I don't mind the fact that the game is pretty abstract, that it doesn't feel much like about this conflict or any conflict specifically. I think you could retheme this with Plants vs. Zombies or a lot of other topics, and you may not realize that it has been rethemed from something historical. But I don't mind that, because I do also play games that are not historical, that are abstract in nature, and that they're good. What kind of bothers me a little bit is that it feels like it could be done. I think it could tailor it to the theme a little bit more. If nothing else, just with more flavor text in the cards, like you have in, say, States of Siege games. Just a block of text that tells you more about specific events, about why things are the way they are, why certain game effects relate to specific elements of the original historical topic. I just feel like, again, that's the weird thing. I feel like there is an opportunity to do so, but the game doesn't do that all too much. You probably would want some extra rules, and I see how they really went for the great streamline approach. But I think there could have been more historical element, more chrome, that would have given a lot more of an historical flavor without raising complexity to the point that this is not a game for beginners anymore. I mean, this could be a beginner's war game, only it's not much of a war game, so it doesn't quite count as one. Worthington Games specializes in very approachable, very easy to pick up, easy to learn games about history. I think they could have invested and developed a little bit more in the department of history here. Other than that, I really like the core engine. It seems so simple, but it's an interesting puzzle. It's mainly a puzzle game, really. But it's fun to try to figure out based on what cards already came out from my deck and from the opponent's deck. And mind you, I'm commenting entirely and only on the cooperative and solitaire version. It's fun to see based on once you get to know the decks, try to figure out what is more likely to happen or not happen. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen a lot of Hessians yet. I know they're coming. Gosh, I really want to play the common sense card before the Declaration of Independence, because they work better that way. There are just a couple of nice, interesting elements there to the puzzles that the more you play, the more you're familiar with them, the more you feel in control, and the more you feel like you're able to devise an actual strategy about it. One thing that I am conflicted about in terms of how the general idea is implemented here is the fact that there really aren't many effects that allow you to do anything with resolved regions. I understand that was part of the original idea. There's maybe one card, maybe two, but I think it's one that lets you move troops from resolved regions into other ones. Thematically, it feels like you're really investing a lot in garrison in regions that have been at peace for a while, that the fate has been resolved, the fate has been known, and so that doesn't make entirely sense to me. But most importantly, just it limits gameplay very much. I wish it gave you more options, and then yes, when can I resolve something? Can I resolve something there, then still do something else? once you know that a region is resolved and everybody in there is functionally dead, that is pretty annoying. Which also gives luck a pretty big role here, because I invested in a region and I got almost there. I put a lot of forces there. And then two unlucky card draws make the opponent, the AI, win that region. All that I invested there is locked out of the game, gone. And sometimes I just look at how many cards are left, I look at the board, and I just know I don't have mathematically the possibility of bringing enough troops somewhere else. And that just leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of a committed solitaire gamer. Another thing, maybe taste, my taste, personal taste, maybe the design. I can't win. I can't figure out how to win. I played the game, I believe, like 5 times now. I haven't been able to win once. Nor was I to a point where, like, well, that was the great strategy and I almost made it. Maybe 2 different things. I can't really figure out a strategy. What happens is things start okay, as different game effects will spread out enemy forces, and then I can choose, am I going to spread out myself, or I'm going to try to control certain regions. But then once regions are controlled, the game effects will concentrate mercilessly the enemy deployments in the unresolved regions, and at that point I can't keep up, because I get the cards that will have some good effects in regions that have already been resolved, but not them, not their deck. No, their deck always pours them into the regions that have not been resolved. So early on, this card is good in Nordic colonies, I played there. Oh, this card is good in Canada, I played there. But towards the end of the game, I'm left with cards that are only subpar when not used in the main regions, but those regions are not there anymore. But their deck, I would say, the deck doesn't slow down, their deck doesn't lose in efficiency the same way that the My American deck does. Actually, I believe it improves in efficiency as the game progresses. And so I always lose. And so at least as of now, I may be doing something wrong. I'm happy if somebody watches this video and realizes, oh my gosh, Mark, you made that fatal mistake here and there. Great, so I can play the game again. But as of now, I don't feel this huge interest in trying again, because again, it's not just that I lost every time. I can't see a strategy that reverses the curse. Something that to me really kills or reduces the interest in a game is when I stop formulating a hypothesis about strategy, when the game stops presenting me with dilemmas. It's not just to lose every time. I can't think of any other ways in which I can try to solve the situation, and that decreases my interest in the game. Again, if somebody finds a strategy that lets you win, once in 3 times, 4 times, I'd be happy. But as of now, I think this game is going to go on the shelf for a while until I can hear feedback from somebody else. I can hear other ideas, because either there is a flaw in the design, and I hope that's not the case, or I'm missing something, and again, I'm missing something, so I need somebody to help me with that. So Hidden Strike American Revolution, I think this is a nice engine. I think it's a nice idea. It could, I believe, by adding more Circle Chrome, become an engine at the core of some really fun, really streamlined and yet historical games. Look at States of Siege. States of Siege games are some of the most streamlined and yet most historically rich games that are out there. And Worthington just published one recently with Soviet Dawn Deluxe that I praised in a previous review. This game doesn't do quite yet. I believe it showcases a new engine that at least I was unfamiliar with. But I don't think it really develops the potential of that engine. On top of that, there is something in there in the design that either has a flaw in there, or I'm not figuring out how to make it to make it work, because I can't win. And again, most importantly, I can't see the possibility of a winning strategy, which clearly reduces my interest in the game considerably.